Hi there again and welcome back to all things music direction in musical theatre on this channel. Now, apologies, can I start with an apology first of all for the lack of video uploads over the last year or so. I've been particularly busy with music projects, plus moving home, plus publishing a book. Means I haven't really had a great amount of time, but I promise more videos are on the way. Now, if there are any specific topics that you want me to cover, either let me know in the comments below or email me directly at musicdirectoronline@gmail.com. In the last video, we looked at using MTI tracks for a production I was involved in and the setup I use when there are no musical instruments in sight. But of course, if you are using any type of track setup, whether that's a track-only production or some musicians playing along to a click track, it opens up the opportunity of using backing vocals in your productions. It's been used in professional theatres for decades, although they wouldn't want you to know that. So in this video, I want to show you how such tracks can be used and how relatively simple it is to use them. So let's bring on the vocals. The book I mentioned just there, for anyone vaguely interested, can be found by using my name on any search on any Amazon platform. It covers everything that I cover in this series of videos, plus a series of anecdotes to illustrate specific topics. Take a look if you're interested. Anyway, to the matter in hand. How can one use pre-recorded backing vocals to enhance the vocal sound in our productions? The musical Legally Blonde brings a whole host of problems for the music director, not least the complexity of the music, but it also requires a large cast. Now, that isn't an issue to companies with large memberships, but with amateur and community companies, there are singers that can act, there are actors who can sing, there are dancers that can act, and dancers that, well, ain't proficient singers. Is that unfair? Or is it a reality? Anyway, the musical Legally Blonde brings such dilemmas to the fore. I'm using this musical to illustrate where pre-recording backing vocals can be an excellent way to address this problem. For those of you that know the production, you'll know that at the beginning of Act 2, there is a musical number called Whipped into Shape. It's a singing fitness class, and what makes it slightly problematic is that your core principals, maybe those who are your strongest singers in the group, can't be part of that energetic and vocally challenging number. Other than having some more capable singers that aren't occupied in the physical exercise on stage gathered around an offstage microphone, which I wanted to avoid at all costs, the alternative would be to pre-record the vocals for this number to help the members on stage produce a sound that isn't all heavy breathing given the strenuous on-stage routine. So I arranged a rehearsal dedicated to recording this number and some other more taxing parts of the score's requirements, and invited members that I know could pick up some harmony lines relatively quickly and to get them recorded. With this particular company I'm working with, I am exceedingly lucky to have a professional sound engineer that I entrusted to help me with this specific project. We used around 5 microphones to pick up the 10 or so singers I used, and after teaching the harmonies required, they sang along to a section of the tracks we were to use in the actual production. That way I was sure the tempos were accurate and would make it easier to then synchronize the vocals and tracks together. The tracks they were singing along with were during the recording session that was then played at a low volume, and that wasn't going to be noticeable on the vocal track. Now, this is of course to avoid the expense of buying or hiring headphones for all singers. You can see the small monitor speaker there in the picture that I used played nice and quiet. They were able to sing along with it, no problem. Now, if that sounds all too complicated, it doesn't have to be. You could use something as simple as the Memo app on an iPhone. No, I'm serious. The microphones on these devices are way more superior than what is needed for making a telephone call. Having half a dozen singers singing into an iPhone will give you much better recording than you think, trust me. But whichever way you use to record these vocals, what you need to do next is to marry these recordings, or should I say synchronize them, with the tracks you're going to use in the performance. So let's take a look at how simple that really is. So here we are in my setup of Cubase. Don't let that worry you. If you don't use Cubase, any DAW will operate in exactly the same way as I'm about to show you, or you could go for the free download software, Audacity, if you know how to use that. You'll see these two blue tracks, WAV files of the tracks that I'm going to use for the performance. So let's just play a few of those. Make sure it plays okay. There we go. Hear that? Yep, that's working fine. Now, the second thing I wanted to point out to you is talking about synchronization in any DAW or in Audacity, for instance. So you can see here anything with a beat, and this song certainly has a beat, you can see where the beats are going to be. But you can also notice, if we move a little bit further on, that when it comes to the beats on the actual grid in Cubase, or your particular DAW, they don't start to line up. Now, that is not a problem. Don't worry about that at this particular point. We're going to be able to synchronize visually rather than having everything mapped to a grid. Grid is more about if we're talking about something that isn't as obvious in the waveform that we're looking at, and these transients of usually the bass drum are very obvious, but we'll come to that in a moment. So we have the WAV files there. Now we can see we have 10 tracks of the vocals that we recorded on that particular day. Right, the reason I've got 10 is that, first of all, we were using 5 microphones, and the sound engineer has quite conveniently given me an output or a track for each of those microphones. You can see I've labeled this one top 1, top 2, top 3, top 4, and top 5. I'm calling it top because it's the top line in the music. I did 2 takes. So I got the group of singers to sing the top line first of all, and then the bottom line separately. And you'll notice that some of these waveforms are slightly larger than other ones. That will be that I've been tweaking, and perhaps it might have been that one of the lower volume ones was a singer that wasn't quite as in tune, or wasn't quite as in time as the rest of them. In other words, it's given me all the flexibility that I needed to mix it as near to the harmonies as that I would want. So let's just mute the back-ends at the moment, and let's just solo, for instance, these top lines. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now this is going to sound very empty and very dry. Here we go.
Whipped into shape.
Yep.
Say how high. Doing it right. To cry.
And you can just hear in the background the track that they were singing to that came from that small monitor speaker I was showing you earlier. Just listen in the background, you can hear it.
Whipped into shape.
There it is.
Say how high. Doing it right. To cry.
And then I recorded, like I say, the bottom line separately, so we can just listen to we can listen to the bottom line on its own if we just mute everything else.
Whipped into shape. Say how high. Doing it right. To cry.
Start to add the top
Look
line.
like you should. Whip it good. Ah, no escape. Whipped into shape.
And then finally, if we add the backing over the top of it, here we go.
Whipped into shape. Say how high. Doing it right. To cry.
Now, Don't be tempted, whatever you do, to try and create some kind of studio sounding recording of these backing vocals. They need to be as dry and as real as they happened in the recording room at the time. We're going to output these as one track, and then we're going to output the backings as a separate track. So that one would be one track, and then this, all 10 of them, would be another track for the entire song, and then we'll group them together in Cubase, which I'll show you in a short while. Don't try to make a studio recording. No reverb, no plugins need to be used whatsoever. You need to make the recordings of the vocals as near to the live vocals sung on stage as possible, so don't be tempted to tweak. Any tweaking will be done by the sound engineer once we get into the theatre. So we're now going to go into our mixdown phase and importing them into QLab, which is the software we're going to be using for queuing all our tracks when we get to the theatre. So here we have our blue backing. Let's zoom out so we can see everything together. Let's just solo those two, and then we go into File to Export Audio Mixdown, as it's called in QLab, and this first one is the track itself, and we'll call that track. There it is to WAV, and we're going to save it in this instance to my desktop. So let's export that. Just takes a few seconds. There we go. I turn off those two solos, and now we're going to just solo the, in fact we could do it a different way. If we just mute those two backing tracks, it's going to pick up everything else. So that was the section of the vocals that we were looking at earlier, but of course to make the number complete, it's got quite a few. Same routine again. Go to File, Export Audio Mixdown, and this time we'll call these the BVs, or the backing vocals. Again, it's a WAV. Again, we're going to go to the desktop. Just give that a few seconds, and we'll end up with our two tracks ready to go into QLab. Okay, let's close that for the time being, and here we have QLab, and we'll go for a new workspace. There it is. Let's go a little bit bigger, and the way I virtually always import tracks into QLab is I just drag and drop them. So here's the track, and there's the backing vocals. But if you know how QLab works, you'll know that they need to be in a group because they need to play at the same time. So there's the group. Let's call it, I don't know, Rob's Demo. And then we make sure that those two tracks are then within the into that group. So when we start playing Rob's Demo now, it will start with the entr'acte because that's the first thing that's in the track. There he is. We'll not play all that, but if we want to have a look at the waveform, that's the track itself, and of course the backing vocals only come in these small sections of the number. So I hope that's useful and showed you how relatively easy it can be to enhance your production like that. But I've got a story to tell. A couple of months before Legally Blonde, I was contacted by a channel subscriber that worked out that I lived in the UK and realised we lived quite close to each other. She asked if I would meet her for a coffee as she was still learning the music director role. A few days later, we met. And she started to tell me that she's working with a local group that produces around 3 musicals a year, and that they always use tracks. One of the musicals she was currently working on, yes, you've guessed it, was Legally Blonde. When she realised I was working on the same musical at the same time, she reached into her bag and produced her scores. When we got to the first number in Act 2 and the issue with dancers not always being proficient singers, I told her what I intended to do by recording the backing vocals to assist the sound on stage. "Oh yes," she said, "now we're using tracks. I've been adding backing vocals for a few years."